friends. Welcome to another episode of Pitchers on the Scorecard. Robby and Seth here. It's U.S. Open week. Seth, I don't know if you're as excited as I am. U.S. Open's one of my favorite tournaments, but excited to chat a little bit. I think today we're going to talk about some U.S. Open logos, just get some thoughts on Pinehurst, talk about maybe what we think will happen or what we're excited to see, and then obviously we'll finish up with our routine par segment. But Seth, how you doing?
Yeah, doing great. I'm actually just coincidentally coming back from a weekend trip up to the Pinehurst area. I got to see the resort and how they're preparing for the event. Obviously didn't play any of the Pinehurst courses. They've got all of them, but a couple kind of shut down and prepping for, the biggest weekend they're going to have for the next, few years. But it was crazy to be up there and see the grandstands around number 2, how they're preparing, all the hospitality, all the infrastructure they brought in, and get to experience that. But also, I that was my first trip up to Pinehurst, not playing Pinehurst resort courses. I got to play the Cradle to kind of kick off the weekend, but then we played 4 other courses in that area, and I knew this, and it shouldn't be a surprise to golf travelers or any golfers around there, but that area is just you can throw a rock and hit a fun course and a great course, and we had a blast up there last weekend. But yeah, I'm super excited for the U.S. Open. Obviously, 2014 is the last time they were up there. And Pinehurst number 2 is just, it's one of the United States' most incredible courses, and it is a beast. I can't wait to see how some of these professionals take it on.
Yeah, I think it'll be especially fun this year. There seems to be a lot more excitement with the USGA now calling Pinehurst home. They've got the Golf Hall of Fame there. Again, back at Pinehurst, they're calling it an anchor site now, so it'll be there every 5 or 6 years, depending on the calendar. And the next one after this year, they're going to be back, I think, 2029, and have the men and women in back-to-back weeks. But it'll be a lot of fun. So let's just start, because you're a logo guy. I kind of want to ask your opinion. U.S. Open logos over the years, sometimes they incorporate the course themselves, and sometimes they kind of get their own little spin. What's your thought on U.S. Open logos?
Yeah, it's funny. People ask me that a lot, and they reference logos for the U.S. Open as inspiration for projects and stuff like that. And it's funny when you really look at it. I don't know. People have this assumption that every year they're designing a new logo for the U.S. Open, and it's really not the case. They certainly have some continuity from a visual perspective. They find a way to incorporate United States Open and the host course's name and the year and all that stuff, but generally they use the club's logo, which is, in my opinion, neither good nor bad. It's one of those things where you play at the most iconic courses in the country. Why not sort of piggyback on their sort of brand awareness? And there are some exceptions. They've been to Pebble and Torrey Pines, looking sort of back in the annals of U.S. Open logo history, where they've taken assets or iconic design elements from these course logos and incorporated them in a unique asset, a unique logo for the tournament, which I think is more interesting. There are a lot of factors in play with this in terms of merchandising and how much the club wants the USGA to come in and sort of not appropriate, but borrow interest from their logo and turn around and sell that on stuff. And I'm sure there's all kinds of profit sharing things that we don't know about, but it is intriguing. But I think one thing the USGA does well is they have a consistent look and feel every year for the US Open. And sometimes, like I said, they just kind of take the course logos and wrap them and sort of put them in a way that's recognizable. But yeah, I think they do a great job with branding and sort of shining a light on these host courses, because that's really where the magic is.
Yeah, and we've talked about it before. Pinehurst does such a good job with the putter boy, and how they incorporate that into the different courses. We talked about the cradle, we talked about cradle crossing, and all the different ways they've used the putter boy, and they've done that here with the U.S. Open logo, holding a number two flag. I think it's really good. I remember we were talking about this a second ago, but I remember the 2014 U.S. Open when they had the men's and women's back to back. I have a shirt. Emily, my wife, actually found a shirt in the thrift store, but so it kind of reminded me of it. But of the U.S. the two trophies, and they had the putter boy hat on one, and I believe a cardinal sitting on the women's trophy. But how Pinehurst has blended their own logos, their own brand into the U.S. Open logo. What are your thoughts on that?
All right, Robbie, I'm going to blow your mind here because I think that there's a big, and this is something I learned when I've had the privilege of working with Pinehurst, and I don't mean to call you out and sort of pinpoint the putter boy.
Oh, please do.
Yeah, well, the putter boy and the U.S. Open guy are different characters. Did you know that? All right, now let me explain.
No, I did not.
If you Google Pinehurst logo right now, the little guy you see, standing over a shot on a platform, that is the putter boy. Okay? If you Google 2024 U.S. Open logo, that is the golf lad. Those are two different characters. And I would not have known that, and nor should most people really take the time to know that. But they treat those two, Pinehurst, the resort, treats those two assets a little differently. The golf lad has a personality. Sometimes he's, in 2014, if you look up that logo, he's sort of got a smirk and he's cradling the U.S. Open trophy. And in this, in the latest rendition of the U.S. Open logo, he's sort of holding the number two flag. That's the golf lad. The putter boy does not have a character. They don't mess with him. And that was something that I learned several years ago when I was kind of getting to know the Pinehurst brand. I don't know if they're actually supposed to be depictions of two different characters, but they treat them in their branding as two different things. And so if you walk in the Pinehurst on the Pinehurst grounds, and you go in like the Carolina Hotel, they have in the hallways, they have these awesome old advertisements for the Pinehurst area and the Pinehurst Resort. And the putter boy shows up as this sort of, he's got a lot of character. Like sometimes he's a little bit creepy in these advertisements. But look, I even said the wrong thing. I meant the golf lad, and I said the putter boy. But yeah, the golf lad has this character, and he's the one you see in the U.S. Open logos. The putter boy is the Pinehurst logo. He does not change. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Mind blown.
Yeah.
But I do now remember. So I was there a couple weeks ago. And I got to go with Joe, golf traveler, a friend of mine that I've met through the social media world. They just moved to Pinehurst. He's now a member of Pinehurst. And he took me down into the members' locker room, and I believe they use the golf lad as their logo.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with that?
Yeah. And we're going to have to post, in the week leading up to this episode, we're going to have to post some photos so we can clarify, because I think I probably butchered the whole explanation. But the putter boy, when we talk about the putter boy, we're talking about the iconic Pinehurst logo that is the little statue on, Thistledew, their putting course. The golf lad is the guy that we see in the U.S. Open assets. But yeah, again, all that stuff aside, it's fun to see how they have a little bit of personality with the branding, and I think I loved in 2014. I loved that rendition of the golf lad, sort of cradling the U.S. Open trophy. I think that was really fun and playful, and I'm biased because a lot of my work in golf branding and design sort of has that little bit of a wink or just a little bit of humor. And for whatever reason, that golf lad, to me is an intriguing character. He's the one that's featured in the Cradle logo, taking a nap in the sea, which I think is really cool. And, that place is so unique in the world of American golf, just because it's in my opinion, the closest thing we get to, I mean, it's the cradle of American golf. If you want to think about, U.S. golf history, that's a good place to start. You may have experienced this when you were there, but it was under construction. I went in December, and they were renovating a good chunk of the main clubhouse, and they have this main hallway you kind of walk to the pro shop in the main clubhouse, and they had all kinds of incredible trophies and little historical sort of vignettes and illustrations and photographs and all that kind of stuff. But they had finished all that last week, and it was so neat to walk down that hallway and look at the Ryder Cup trophy and see Michael Campbell and Martin Keimer and Michelle Wee and all that stuff. It's just, and it goes, Payne Stewart, obviously. It goes way further back than that. But that place it's a golfer's, golf nerds sort of mecca. I didn't get a chance to go to the USGA. I don't know what they're calling it. This is the House of Golf.
The Golf House Pinehurst, yeah.
The Golf House Pinehurst, yeah. You've been there, right? Can you tell us about that?
How much time do we have? It was incredible. I walked in there. I spent 45 minutes in there. I could have spent days. They have done such an incredible job, one, talking about kind of the USGA and their process for course upkeep and maintenance and all the things they've done. But then you also have the historical side of the World Golf Hall of Fame, and they have the lockers where you can go see all the historical, from players to architects to anybody that's had an impact on the game. There's lockers designed with their stuff. It's incredible. I mean, you see the belt that they won at the Open Championship that's in old Tom Morris's locker or young Tom Morris's locker or whatever. So it's like you talked about, walking down the hall to the clubhouse or to the pro shop at Pinehurst in their actual resort. It's like that on steroids. So there's just so much history, fun things, just highlighting the game of golf that we all love. So yeah, absolutely recommend, if you have time, to go check it out and spend some time there.
Yeah. Well, so we got in last Thursday, and so when we're recording this, we're I guess a little over 8 days from the start of tournament play in Pinehurst. And so when I got there, it was a couple weeks before, and the infrastructure and the grandstands and the amount of sort of activity around preparations for the tournament was incredible. So I came in, we had a tee time on the Cradle at 4:00 or whatever, and we got there at I got there around lunchtime, and so we went and ate lunch at the Deuce right there on number 2's 18 green. And I've had the good fortune of playing number 2 3 or 4 times, and it's always sort of a solitary experience walking up 18. And then when you get to 18 green, if it's sort of if it's the right time of year, you get a ton of people kind of watching you on that patio. And this was the opposite. There was only a handful of people in the patio, and the grandstands were just towering over 18, and it was just bizarre to think about playing that hole or in any of the holes on that course with thousands of people watching you. I don't know about your experience in number 2. I mean, it's incredible. I'll play it. I'll drop everything and play it anytime, but it is a slog. It's a tough course.
Yeah, I agree. I've played it once. I played it last summer about this time. I was telling somebody the other day, I feel like I smiled the entire time I was out there, because you feel like you're walking in the footsteps of other champions that have played it. And I describe it again. We were talking the other day about the difference between Pinehurst and Augusta. And Augusta, you can drive by the gate. Pinehurst, you can actually go play the course that they're playing championships on. And it was everything you thought it would be. What they described the greens as turtlebacks. You had to putt up all of them if you missed, and you will miss. You might touch the green for a second, but you're probably going to roll off. Incredible experience. I, like you, would drop everything and go play it again right now. The thought of, as you described, because I saw the grandstands too about 2 or 3 weeks ago, the thought of hitting it into 18, one, is tough enough with the deuce right behind it, because I think I'm going to thin it into the restaurant. But
Yeah.
to think about everybody sitting there watching, that's why they're professionals.
Yeah. So we played the cradle like I mentioned, and we were watching. So we were teeing off, and Ed, shout out to Ed, our starter at the cradle, was just so welcoming, and I was there with like I was there with 7 other guys, and I think one of them had played it before, but the rest of them hadn't been there, and I mean, what an intro to the whole area. Not to mention the resort itself, but Ed got us, feeling good. He mentioned, he was like, hey, I don't know what's going on I think it was 5 and 6 on the cradle, which sort of butts up to number 1 on number 1, I think. And they were putting these massive sort of telephone poles in the ground. And I was kind of spaced out. I'd traveled or whatever, and I wasn't really paying attention. I was like, what are they doing? And I knew this going in, but I'd totally forgotten it. But we played the cradle once, and I was like, I don't know what they're putting up over there. Like, I guess they're putting up netting for, so people don't hit it from number 1 into the cradle. And somebody passed us, or, was talking to us on the cradle, like, man, this is going to be a crazy driving range. And I was like, oh, yeah, I totally forgot. The driving range for the event, for the pros, is the cradle. And that was sort of mind-boggling to me. Like, imagine stepping up to your driving range, you're hitting shots to, like, Gil Hance greens or whatever. It was pretty neat to envision that.
Yeah, you might have been one of the last few groups to get to play the cradle before they shut it down and make it the driving range, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's just super neat. Obviously, it was nettings to keep these guys from bombing it into number 1 fairway on Pinehurst number 1.
Well, speaking of number 2, obviously they're about to tee off, and when this thing airs, it'll be the week of the U.S. Open. You say you've played it a number of times. What are you looking forward to the most watching this year's U.S. Open on number 2?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this type of course highlights, and a lot of this is sort of cliche, and they'll make a big, sort of fuss about it, but like creativity around the greens is something that I think gets taken for granted in championship golf, especially not a knock on PGA Championship or other U.S. Open venues, but seeing players hit shots they don't normally hit shots like they don't normally have to week in week out is going to be really interesting to see. I mean, that's a course obviously played better closer to the ground, and these guys are obviously used to lofting the ball up and letting it stop somewhere. So coming into the greens, around the greens, they're gonna have to play shots they don't normally hit. I have no doubt they'll be prepared for that. But it's some of that will probably still be mitigated, and it depends on what the weather is going to be like coming in. I hope it is blazing fast and firm and everything that it should be. But who knows? Depending on the card they get dealt from the weather standpoint, I do think it's going to be an incredibly challenging test for all these guys. And I didn't look back. Maybe you know this off the top of your head, and I can look it up right now. But I don't know what won in 2014. And in the years past, but I hope it's a high number.
Yeah, I think most years it's around even par, maybe 1 or 2 under. I think Martin Keimer kind of got 8-shot win, so he kind of got away from the field a little bit. He was the only one though, so he was just playing that good of golf. Um, uh, what do you think about? So Pinehurst is obviously different than most U.S. Open venues when you think about the rough, right? A lot of people think about a U.S. Open venue and the rough is people are walking by during the practice rounds, dropping balls and laughing because they can't see them. But Pinehurst, it is very narrow fairways rolling into sand and wiregrass, and that's just the way it is all the time. Do you like one versus the other for a test of the U.S. Open?
I I think I'm going to prefer the test that Pinehurst is going to offer. I think the super thick rough still rewards guys that just hit it a mile, because those guys are usually the strongest, and so when they hit it far up into the rough, they can muscle it out, and they still have an advantage. They don't really get penalized the same way that a guy that hits it a normal human length. But I think that the natural the natural areas of number two are, it's sort of a crapshoot. Like sometimes you can get in there and you can have a perfectly fine hard packed sand lie, and then sometimes you're in a clump of wiregrass where you're never going to find that ball, and if you do, you're never going to be able to get it out of there. When I was there and when I played number two in December, I remember they were actually, it's funny, we played from like 2 tees up probably, and if you hit a really good drive, you might get it into a roped off area where they were protecting the fairways for the Open, and this is 7 months ahead of time, and if you hit it in that area, you either had to pull it back or hit it off of a little rectangle piece of AstroTurf, and that only happened for me like once or twice maybe, so I didn't really hit it into that area very much. But anyway, just thinking about like missing the fairway on that course is less about the lie that you're going to have. It's more about the angle you're going to end up with coming into those greens, and I think that angles get accentuated on this course more than a lot of U.S. Open venues or any professional tournament venue. Donald Ross is Donald Ross for a reason, and he wants you to play that course from the right spots. And I think that the way that they have reworked it, they reworked it however many years ago. They brought back that level of getting the right angle, coming at the right spot from the coming off the tee to the fairway, coming at those greens from the right angle. So I hope that it's going to hold up and present a test that we don't normally see. And from what I heard, there's a lot more wiregrass out there, so I think you're going to see a lot less of those lucky, I hit it in the net, in those sort of waste areas, and I got lucky and got a firm lie, and I can hit my normal shot. I don't know that. I hope that you're not going to see a lot of that.
I know they did plant a lot more of the wiregrass. One thing, and this isn't part of our routine par, but I just thought of this. But the Fried Egg Golf guys, they had a video they just released where they talked about playing number two, the restoration of number two. They had Jeff Ogilvy on there. They had Bill Core talking about the restoration of it, and it was amazing looking at some of the video they had of how green the resort got. Like they had fairways that were green, but like the rough that was really green, and because they kind of got away from what Donald Ross had originally intended, and Core and Crenshaw get out there and they say, hey, do you want to do this? And they're like, oh man. And it wasn't until somebody found black and white pictures from like the 1940s of the course where they said, all right, here's how it's supposed to look, how Donald Ross intended it for look, and exactly like you said, the angles of how you're supposed to play it, that they took on that project back in 2012, I believe, before the 2014 Open. And I am glad they did. So highly recommend going to check out the Fried Egg Golf. I think it's maybe a 20-minute video or something like that on YouTube, but go check it out. It's very fascinating to watch as you prepare for the U.S. Open. So highly recommend that.
Well, one thing I'll say about that, it's so interesting. Like because the Pinehurst area is literally the home of Donald Ross. Obviously, he's born in Scotland, but he made that his home for most of his life. I grew up playing on a Donald Ross course in Athens, Georgia. It's a awesome course. Donald Ross may have spent 48 hours tops on that property, and we tout it, or not we, I'm not a member there, but like they tout it as a Donald Ross course, and it truly is. There's no doubt about that. It has got all the characteristics and all the great things about a Donald Ross course. But Pinehurst is unique in that the dude lived there. and what they did
off hole number 3. Yep.
Exactly. And what they did in 2012 in terms of restoring it back to what his intentions were. They had a lot of information to understand what his intentions were with that course. And I think they brought it back in a way that a lot of other awesome, incredible Donald Ross courses can't really say they knew what he was thinking and what he wanted you to do around that course. And so I just think it's the, one of the premier examples of sort of his genius or his madness, depending on how you look at it. I hope I'm like Big Randy with no laying up. Like I want to see chaos. I want to see these guys scratching their heads. I see them make birdies every week, and that's fun. That's great. But I want to see them just grinding and having a hell of a time out there, just trying to make par, because that's what I do when I play that type of course. And I think that professional golf doesn't have enough of that. I mean, golf is so darn hard for everybody. And when you watch those guys just tear it up week in and week out, it gets a little boring for me. So I hope they're sweating out there. It was getting pretty hot when I was up there last week, and I hope it's going to be hot and dry and fast and firm for those guys next week.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, the U.S. Open and the Open Championship, which we'll have next month, are ones that you watch and you, as a amateur golfer, you kind of be like, all right, I feel like these guys come back a little bit to the rest of us. Although if we were to play those courses, we'd be humbled a whole lot more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. So, all right, so we're talking about the course. We're talking about how hard we want it to be. We talked about, the shot shaping, playing for angles. We don't normally say, hey, here's our winners, here's who we're picking, but who would you say their game suits well right now for playing and doing well this year at the U.S. Open? Who would you pick?
Man, I knew you were going to ask me that question, but I wasn't. I'm not prepared to answer it. I mean, I think provided I'm sure Scotty's going to get there early and make good relations with the Pinehurst, Village of Pinehurst Police Department. But I think that he's the man to beat, which is the most lame thing to say. That being said, I mean, Xander, I don't know that Xander's really shown a ton of, a long history of creativity around the greens, but the dude's playing, top of the world right now. If you give me your picks, I bet I'll come up with a more interesting take. But I do know it's going to take. I mean, ball striking and driving are always going to be rewarded when you hit it as far as these guys do. I don't think there's really any magic other than that. But I do think it's going to take a guy that really is sort of willing to just get beat up time and time again and make a bogey and then come back and make a birdie to erase it, because that's, I think, what's kind of in store for these guys next week.
I think that phrase right there, make a bogey and then come back and make a birdie, I heard at a recent tournament, gosh, I don't remember which one it was, but that's what they described Scotty Scheffler. He has that stat. He's the best at the comeback after a bogey at making a birdie, which, for me, if I ever make a birdie, it's the opposite. Like, it's going to be a bogey or worse the next hole. So I think my picks would be somebody that has to hit it within, I've been saying like a 3-foot circle. Maybe I'll expand it to 5 feet, but the Pinehurst greens, like, you have to hit it in these certain spots or you're going to roll off and you have to have a good short game. I think somebody that can do that but then also when you do miss it, you have the mentality of being calm and knowing that it's going to happen from time to time, and have the skill and the mindset to recover from it. I think Scotty obviously fits that very well. I like a Max Homa as well. In this case. I think his game, I think he can hit it far enough, and then I think he's just got a smooth swing. If he's on, I think he can throw some darts, or just put it in the right spot and then recover when needed. So if you gave me two picks, those are my two.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll go. I'm going to go Colin Morikawa to win it. That's going to be my money pick. I think that guy's got a sort of U.S. Open mindset in terms of being somewhat unflappable, and I would not be surprised if we see Wyndham Clark come in and contend for the repeat. I think he's got a pretty good game for this type of course. But yeah, I don't see this one being a long shot winner. I think we're gonna have one of those, chalky kind of leaderboards, which is fine as long as it's not at 12 under or 14 under or something like that.
Yeah.
Which I don't think it will be.
Give me 1 or 2 under and a big name guy, and I'm good.
Yeah, agree totally.
Yep. Well, it'll be fun to watch. Obviously later this week. Are you going to be there at all? Did you score any tickets?
No, I didn't really try. Not that it would have made a difference if I had tried, but no, I've been away from the wife and kids for plenty this spring, and I'm rolling into a member guest this weekend, so I need to next week. I know it's Father's Day, and the most I would feel comfortable asking for is an afternoon to watch golf, but we may have the iPads out with Bluey or whatever it is. So yeah, that's my plan, is to stay out of the heat and enjoy it on TV.
Yeah, very nice. There's a very small chance that I will go Saturday for the Saturday round. Still looking for some tickets, but Jonathan Hill and I have talked about maybe just going and hanging out in the Pinehurst, the Village area, and kind of soaking all of the goodness in of just being up there. But we'll see.
Love it.
It'll be a fun weekend. So, all right. So we wrap up most shows with what we call routine par. A few things that stand out to us in the golf space. I'll throw out one to start with. We talked about logos and the Putter Boy logo and incorporating all that. I just happened to see this today. I think Dave Baston did it for Zach Blair, but Zach's got the Lumber Zach logo, or you might know what it's called better, but they took that and they kind of Putter Boy Zach'd it, right? Like they put the hat on him and you could tell it's Zach, but I thought that was pretty cool. So well done for that one.
Yeah, I love Dave Bazin. Just does awesome work, and those are always fun to see. The riffs on the original Lumberjack. Yeah, mine is something we briefly talked about before the show. It's so Kith, which is a luxury brand, streetwear brand, is doing another collaboration with TaylorMade. I believe they've already had some sort of relationship in the past, but Jimmy Fallon's involved. And all that's well and good. That's totally fine. It's just interesting to me when you've got pop culture, sort of streetwear, high fashion, and mainstream golf all coming together to collaborate on a line of apparel. And I think maybe equipment too, but I just think it's fascinating, and it's something we talk about a lot on this podcast, which is where we just see a lot more happening in the game of golf, from a merchandising point, from an apparel, from a equipment, from a creativity standpoint, that you just can't imagine happening 4 or 5 years ago, and love it, hate it. If you're a Malbon guy that loves what Jason Day did wore at the Masters, which I have no problem with. I love it. I think it's great that we're having these conversations and that people are getting worked up about these types of things. All of that to me just speaks to the reach of the game and how much more interesting it is now that these things are even happening. And there will always be people that don't like it, and that is fine. It's not all for you, but if someone's interested and that gets someone into the game, then I love it. I'm not going to spend money on it. I don't have thousands of dollars to spend on TaylorMade, Kith, Jimmy Fallon stuff, but if you do and that's your thing, go for it. I love it.
Yeah, I think you're right. We have talked about the fashion and the cross blend of social, golf, all this stuff together. But we talked about the 99 Open, right? The U.S. Open, and you got Payne Stewart, and he didn't dress like everybody else. And you look at a lot of the fashion and stuff the guys are wearing then is probably a lot more similar to the Malbons and these other brands than people would like to think about. So it's funny. I mean, fashion trends come around, they'll go away, then they'll come back. I mean, so it's fun. You know, if it brings more people to the game, great. If you can have fun with it, great. And like you said, I won't be the one buying it, but if somebody does, fine. More power to them. So.
Lastly, before we sort of wrap things up, one experience that I did have last weekend that I had never had in my previous visits to the Pinehurst area. So I had dinner at Pinecrest Inn with 7 of my boys or whatever, and we had a big time. We're coming off of 2 days of 36 holes each, and we have a big dinner, and we have some beverages after dinner in the bar at the Pinecrest Inn. And if anyone's never been to Pinehurst, go to the Pinecrest Inn and eat dinner, treat everybody nice, and then ask to chip balls into the fireplace. Have you done that, Robbie?
I have not.
So I'm not going to ruin the surprise. There is no surprise. You're chipping balls into essentially the fireplace, and when you get in there with 8 of your buddies and then not a lot of other people from the public, it just makes for just an awesome experience. Especially the later at night you get, the better it gets. But Pinecrest Inn is a must see, must experience for those that might want to visit the Pinehurst area in the future. You can chip balls in the fireplace. Just tip your waiters and be nice to people.
Very nice. Well, that's awesome, man. Yeah, we'll have to do that. Next time. I wonder if any of the pros will be doing that this week. But anyway.
I'd be surprised if they didn't. This is a lot of fun. I think we've got a great week ahead. I guess when we release this, it'll be U.S. Open week, right?
Absolutely.
That the idea.
Yep. And let me as we're talking U.S. Open and all the things going on, I just got to give a plug. So Best Ball produces this podcast. It's my company here, but we've got another podcast called The Whole Story Podcast that we started with, and just to highlight a few of the shows that we've done, kind of centered around the U.S. Open coming up. But we've had Matt Gibson. If you haven't checked out his work on Instagram, but he is the director of kind of creativity at Pinehurst. So we did an episode with him. Any of the Pinehurst posts on Instagram, he's doing it, right? It's his work. But we've had Lee Pace, who's a writer in the Carolinas. He does awesome work talking about the restoration of Pinehurst and all the other stuff in the Carolinas. And then John Patota, who is known on Instagram as the Pinehurst photographer. Just great experiences that we've had talking to these folks that love the area, that highlight Pinehurst, and are excited about the U.S. Open. So just wanted to give a quick little plug in our routine par segment for those. Check out the Whole Story Podcast on those.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Robbie. As always, I can't believe this podcast exists. We're talking about creativity in the golf industry, which is just incredible. But I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you will join us for the next round of Pictures on the Scorecard.